What if I told you that some of the most beautiful plants at your local nursery are ticking time bombs, collectively costing homeowners billions every year? In property damage, you see these plants sitting there on the shelf, looking gorgeous, looking harmless, but underneath that beauty is an underground network of roots, runners, and rhizomes that will crack your foundation, crush your fence, and empty your wallet. I'll never forget talking to a homeowner at a local garden swap a few years back. She told me she planted wisteria on her brand new cedar pergola the week after her wedding. It was supposed to be this beautiful, romantic addition to her backyard. 5 years later, that wisteria had crushed the pergola, wrapped around every fence post on the property, and sent runners into the neighbor's yard. The vines were thicker than her wrist. She spent over $4,000 just on removal. And that didn't even include rebuilding the pergola. That conversation changed how I think about every single plant on this list. Because these aren't just annoying weeds. They are expensive, heartbreaking mistakes. Today we're counting down 20 of the most destructive plants, ranked from annoying all the way to absolutely nightmarish. And I'm going to show you exactly what each one will cost you in money, in time, and in heartache. Stick around, because number 13 on this list literally wages chemical warfare on your soil. And number 20, it combines everything terrible about every other plant on this list into one absolute nightmare. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We help you garden smarter, not harder. Let's get into it. Number 1, bamboo, the underground invader. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Bamboo is beautiful. It grows fast. It makes a great privacy screen. And you're not wrong. But here's what nobody tells you at the garden center. Running bamboo sends out underground rhizomes that can travel 10 to 15 feet in a single growing season. These aren't delicate little roots. They're woody, aggressive, and they will punch right through concrete, asphalt, and even your foundation. I've seen bamboo come up through cracks in driveways. I've seen it push through retaining walls. And once it's established, you are in for the fight of your gardening life. Professional bamboo removal averages $1,500 to $3,500, and that's if you catch it early. Let it go a few years, and you're looking at excavation equipment and a bill that'll make your eyes water. Think of it as an underground army that never sleeps, never stops marching, and never, ever surrenders. Number 2, mint, the escaped prisoner. Everybody loves mint. It smells amazing. It's great in tea. It's wonderful in cooking. So you plant a little patch in your herb garden. What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. Mint sends out runners both above and below the ground, spreading up to 2 feet in every direction per season. It doesn't care about your garden borders. It doesn't care about your mulch. It doesn't care about your feelings. Once mint escapes its original planting area, it will colonize every inch of open soil it can find. And pulling it out? Good luck. Every tiny piece of root left behind will sprout a brand new plant. Now here's the good news. And I always want to give you solutions, not just problems. Grow mint in containers instead. Same incredible flavor, same beautiful plant, zero invasion. A simple pot on your patio solves the entire problem. Think of it as that house guest who was only supposed to stay for a weekend, but somehow moved into every room in your house. Now, if mint is an escaped prisoner, this next plant is a full-blown demolition crew. Number 3. Japanese knotweed, the foundation destroyer. This plant is in a league of its own. Japanese knotweed sends rhizomes down 7 feet deep and can spread 60 feet from the original planting. It grows through concrete, through asphalt, through brick walls. In Japan, it grows on volcanic rock. Let that sink in. If it can push through volcanic rock, your garden wall doesn't stand a chance. And here's where it gets really painful. In the United Kingdom, Japanese knotweed can reduce your property value by 10 to 15%. Some mortgage companies won't even lend on properties with confirmed knotweed. That beautiful house you've been building equity in. Knotweed can wipe out tens of thousands of dollars in value. Professional eradication takes 3 to 5 years of repeated treatment. 3 to 5 years. And even then, it can come back from a piece of root the size of your fingernail. Think of it as a demolition machine. That was specifically designed to destroy everything humans build. And it never runs out of fuel. Number 4. English ivy, the silent strangler. English ivy looks charming on a cottage wall. It looks romantic in photographs. But those aerial roots that cling so beautifully to surfaces, they're slowly destroying whatever they're attached to. Ivy roots work their way into mortar, into brick, into wood siding. They hold moisture against surfaces, promoting rot. And a mature ivy vine on a tree can add hundreds of pounds of weight to the canopy, bringing down limbs, or the entire tree in a storm. And here's something many pet owners don't realize. Ivy berries are toxic to both dogs and cats. If you have a pet that likes to explore the yard, English ivy isn't just a structural threat, it's a health threat to your family. Think of it as a slow-motion python. It wraps gently, looks beautiful, and by the time you notice the squeeze, the damage is already done. Ivy is dangerous enough on its own. But the next plant, it doesn't just invade, it devours. Number 5. Kudzu, the vine that ate the South. If there's one plant on this list that looks like something out of a science fiction movie, it's Kudzu. This vine can grow up to 1 foot per day during peak growing season. 1 foot per day. In a single summer, it can extend 60 feet. Kudzu was actually brought to the United States intentionally. The government promoted it for erosion control in the 1930s, and it worked great for erosion. It also worked great for swallowing entire buildings, covering forests, and smothering everything in its path. Today, Kudzu covers an estimated 7 million acres across the southeastern United States. The USDA estimates that Kudzu causes over $500 million in crop damage every single year. If you need erosion control, and many of you do, try clump-forming native grasses instead. They'll hold your soil without eating your house. Think of it as a green tidal wave that moves a little slower, but never, ever recedes. Number 6. Trumpet vine, the beautiful destroyer. I have a love-hate relationship with trumpet vine, and I think many of you do too. Those orange flowers are absolutely stunning. Hummingbirds love them. It's one of the most gorgeous flowering vines you'll ever see. But underneath that beauty, trumpet vine sends underground runners up to 30 feet from the parent plant, and the main stem becomes woody, and thick enough to crush wooden structures over time. You cut it down. It comes back. You dig out the roots. Any piece you miss sprouts a new plant. It's like fighting a hydra. Every time you think you've won, 2 more heads appear. Now, if you want hummingbirds without the destruction, native coral honeysuckle is your answer. Same beautiful trumpet-shaped flowers, same hummingbird magnetism. But it stays where you put it. It's a perfect swap. Think of it as a gorgeous singer who sounds incredible, but slowly wrecks every venue while performing. Speaking of beautiful destroyers, have you ever seen a wisteria in full bloom? Gorgeous, right? Well, number 7, Wisteria, the pergola crusher. Remember that story from the beginning? $4,000 in damage. And honestly, that homeowner got off light. Wisteria vines grow as thick as a human leg. They twist with a force that can bend metal, crush wooden pergolas, and pull down entire garden structures. And the root system is just as aggressive underground, sending suckers up through lawns, through gardens, through anywhere they please. But the danger doesn't stop at structural damage. Every part of wisteria is toxic, especially the seed pods, those beautiful purple clusters that hang down so elegantly. They produce bean-like pods that are extremely attractive to curious children and pets, and extremely dangerous if ingested. Keep children and pets away from wisteria. Period. Think of it as a beautiful boa constrictor, mesmerizingly gorgeous on the outside, but with a grip that will slowly, relentlessly crush everything it wraps around. Number 8. Bermuda grass, the unkillable lawn. Bermuda grass attacks on 3 fronts simultaneously: stolons above ground, rhizomes below ground, and seeds through the air. It spreads up to 6 feet per growing season and laughs at landscape fabric. I've seen Bermuda grass grow right through weed barrier cloth. I've seen it come up through 4 inches of mulch. It is, without question, one of the most persistent grasses on the planet. And here's what makes it truly maddening. Bermuda grass goes dormant in winter, looking completely dead. You think you've won. Spring comes, and it's back, thicker than ever, as if nothing happened. If you're dealing with Bermuda grass in your garden beds, the only real solution is constant vigilance. Pull it the moment you see it. Don't let it get established, because once it takes hold, you're looking at a lifetime commitment. Think of it as that one weed that looked at every weapon in your garden shed and said, "Is that all you've got?" If Bermuda grass is the unkillable lawn, wait until you meet its sneaky cousin. Number 9. Bishop's weed, the variegated devil. This one tricks people with its looks. Those pretty variegated leaves, green and white, perfectly ornamental, make bishop's weed look like a well-behaved ground cover. Nurseries sell it as a shade-loving ornamental. Don't fall for it. Bishop's weed spreads through an aggressive underground rhizome system. And here's the truly evil part. When you try to dig it out, the rhizomes fragment. Every fragment becomes a new plant. So the very act of trying to remove it actually helps it spread. It forms such dense colonies that nothing else can grow. No native wildflowers, no other ground covers, nothing. It creates a botanical desert, disguised as a pretty carpet. Think of it as the con artist of the plant world. Beautiful on the surface, devastating underneath, and it multiplies every time you try to stop it. Number 10. Jerusalem artichoke, the eternal tuber. Jerusalem artichoke looks innocent enough. It's related to sunflowers. It produces cheerful yellow blooms, and the tubers are actually edible. Here's the problem. Those tubers break apart at the slightest touch, and every piece, even a fragment the size of your thumbnail, will grow a brand new plant. The root system goes down 6 feet or more, and the plants tower 8 to 10 feet tall, casting dense shade over everything around them. Once Jerusalem artichoke is established, you will be digging up tubers for the rest of your gardening career. Every spring, more will appear. It's like an archaeological dig that never ends. Think of it as a gift that keeps on giving, whether you want it to or not. Now, before we get to the truly catastrophic plants in the second half of this list, I want to pause for a moment, because every time we post about destructive plants, the comments flood in with your stories. And honestly, some of them keep me up at night. One of you wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, "I am still fighting trumpet vine that was planted 30 years ago. 30 years. That's not a gardening problem anymore. That's a life sentence. And that's exactly why we don't just list these plants and move on. We want to make sure you know what each one actually costs in money, in time, and in heartache. So if you're watching this and thinking, I already planted one of these, you are not alone. And stay with us, because the solutions are coming. If any of these plants have invaded your garden, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now so we can push this video out and warn more gardeners before they make these mistakes. Subscribe if you haven't already. We've got a lot more coming to help you protect your garden and your wallet. And here's what I want you to do in the comments. Tell me your worst plant nightmare. Which plant on this list has cost you the most money and the most heartache? I read every single comment, and your stories help other gardeners avoid the same mistakes. Now, let's get into the second half. And fair warning, it gets a lot worse from here. Number 11, Creeping Charlie, the lawn destroyer. Creeping Charlie, also known as ground ivy, is every lawn lover's worst nightmare. It sends out stolons that root at every single node, creating an interconnected web that carpets your entire lawn. And here's what makes it especially frustrating. Creeping Charlie has a waxy coating on its leaves that repels most herbicides. You spray it, the herbicide beads up and rolls right off. It's like trying to wash a duck. The most effective approach? Manual removal in spring, when the soil is moist, combined with overseeding your lawn to crowd it out. It's a battle of patience, not chemicals. Think of it as the ultimate squatter. It moved in without permission. It won't respond to eviction notices, and it's covered in a waterproof jacket that deflects everything you throw at it. Creeping Charlie is tough, but it's only been around for a few centuries. This next plant, it's survived since the dinosaurs. Number 12, Horsetail, the prehistoric survivor. Horsetail has been on this planet for over 300 million years. It survived the extinction that killed the dinosaurs. Let me put that in perspective. This plant has been around for 295 million years longer than humans. So when you think your weekend weeding session is going to stop it, it has some bad news for you. Horsetail roots go down 6 feet or more. The stems contain silica, the same mineral used to make glass, which makes them nearly indestructible, and it spreads through both spores and underground rhizomes. Modern herbicides, Horsetail barely notices them. It survived volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and meteor impacts. Your bottle of weed killer is not going to be the thing that finally takes it down. Think of it as the ultimate survivor. It's outlasted every extinction event Earth has thrown at it, and it will absolutely outlast your gardening efforts. Number 13. Tree of Heaven, the chemical warfare tree. This is the one I warned you about at the beginning. Tree of Heaven doesn't just invade your property. It poisons the soil around it. It's allelopathic, meaning it releases toxins into the ground that kill other plants. It literally wages chemical warfare on everything around it. And it's prolific. A single tree can produce hundreds of thousands of seeds per year. Cut it down. The root system responds by sending up dozens of new shoots. You cut one tree and get 20 in return. Now, I know many of you prefer natural methods, and so do we. The most effective organic approach is consistent cutting of new shoots to exhaust the root system over time. It takes patience, but it works. Herbicide should be an absolute last resort, applied directly to a fresh-cut stump, and only if natural methods haven't worked after multiple seasons. Think of it as a chemical weapons factory, disguised as a shade tree, and cutting it down just activates the backup generators. Tree of Heaven poisons the soil, but at least it stays in one place. What if a plant could actually change the chemistry of your entire property? Number 14. Russian Olive, the soil chemistry manipulator. Russian Olive has a secret weapon that most people don't know about. It fixes nitrogen in the soil. That might sound like a good thing, but it fundamentally changes the chemistry of your soil, favoring invasive species and disrupting the native plant community. And the spread is relentless. Birds eat the small olive-like fruits and deposit seeds miles from the parent tree. One Russian olive in your neighborhood can seed an entire creek bed, an entire roadside, an entire field. It's now banned or restricted in several states because of the ecological damage it causes. Native ecosystems that took centuries to develop can be permanently altered in just a few years. Think of it as a saboteur that rewrites the chemistry of your soil from the inside and recruits birds as its unwitting delivery service. Number 15. Purple Loosestrife, the Wetland Destroyer. This plant produces up to 2.7 million seeds per plant per year. Let that number sink in. One plant. Nearly 3 million seeds every single year. Purple Loosestrife invades wetlands and literally pushes out every native species. The cattails, the sedges, the native wildflowers that provide food and habitat for wildlife, all gone, replaced by a monoculture of purple Loosestrife that looks pretty but is an ecological wasteland. It's now banned in many states, but it's already established across most of North America. The damage to wildlife habitat has been devastating. Think of it as a hostile corporate takeover of an entire ecosystem. It moves in, eliminates the competition, and replaces everything with its own franchise. Purple Loosestrife destroys entire ecosystems. But here's one that tricks you into thinking you're helping the environment. Number 16. Butterfly bush, the aggressive cedar. I know this one is going to be controversial. Butterfly bush is one of the most popular plants in America. It attracts butterflies, it's beautiful, and every garden center has an entire section devoted to it. But here's what they don't tell you. Butterfly bush attracts adult butterflies for nectar, but it does not support butterfly larvae. It's a fast food restaurant with no nursery. Butterflies visit, feed, and leave. They can't lay eggs on it because their caterpillars can't eat it. Meanwhile, it self-seeds by the thousands, invading roadsides, riverbanks, and natural areas. Native milkweed and coneflowers support the full butterfly life cycle, not just a quick meal. They provide nectar and host caterpillars. That's the swap that actually helps butterflies instead of just looking like it does. Think of it as a flashy billboard advertising butterfly paradise. But behind the sign, there's nothing but empty promises and a spreading parking lot. Number 17. Chameleon plant. The unstoppable underground runner. Chameleon plant has some of the most striking foliage you'll ever see. Green, yellow, pink, red, all on the same leaf. It's like a living rainbow. Nurseries sell it as a colorful ground cover. But this plant combines the worst characteristics of mint, bishop's weed, and horsetail into one super invader. Underground rhizomes that spread aggressively, fragments that regenerate into new plants, and a smell. If you crush the leaves, it produces an odor that some people describe as fishy and rotten. So you get an unkillable, foul-smelling plant that takes over every inch of ground it can find. The complete package. Think of it as a shapeshifter that lures you in with its beauty, then reveals that it's actually 3 different nightmares, wearing one colorful disguise. Number 18. Morning Glory. The smothering vine. Those gorgeous trumpet-shaped flowers that open every morning. They're attached to a vine that can grow 15 feet in a single season, wrapping around and choking everything in its path. Your tomatoes, your corn, your trellis, your fence. And the seeds, they can remain viable in the soil for decades. You might clear morning glory from your garden this year and see it pop up 20 years from now, from seeds you never even knew were there. And here's a critical safety warning. Morning glory seeds contain compounds similar to LSD. They're toxic to pets and potentially dangerous for curious children. If you have small kids or pets who explore the garden, this is a plant you need to take seriously. Think of it as a beautiful assassin. It hugs its victims to death with gorgeous flowers, and it leaves behind sleeper agents that can activate decades later. Number 19. Yellow Archangel. The forest floor killer. Yellow Archangel sends out stolons that create a thick, dense carpet, smothering every native wildflower, every spring ephemeral, every piece of biodiversity on the forest floor. It's one of those plants that escapes from gardens into nearby woods and just takes over. Those pretty yellow flowers and silver-marked leaves might look nice in your shade garden, but when they escape into the forest, they create a biological desert. Native trilliums, native violets, native ferns, all displaced by a solid mat of yellow archangel that nothing can grow through. Think of it as a green carpet bomb. It drops from your garden into the forest and eliminates everything that was growing there before. Yellow Archangel destroys forests. But our number 20, the worst plant on this list, combines everything we've talked about into one absolute nightmare. Number 20, the worst plant on this list, black locust, the root-suckering nightmare. Black locust is the final boss of destructive plants, and I don't say that lightly, because this tree combines every destructive mechanism we've talked about today into one single species. Root suckering? It has it. Cut down one black locust tree, and the root system responds by sending up dozens, sometimes hundreds, of new shoots across your entire property. One tree becomes a forest. Allelopathy. It has that too. Like tree of heaven, black locust releases chemicals that suppress other plants. Nitrogen fixing? Yes. It changes your soil chemistry just like Russian olive. And on top of all that, thorns. Vicious, inch-long thorns on every branch that will put you in the emergency room if you're not careful. The removal cost, $2,000 to $5,000 or more per tree, including stump grinding. And even after you've paid that bill, you'll be fighting root suckers for years, possibly decades. I had a viewer tell me they cut down one black locust and ended up with 67 new shoots across their yard the following spring. 67 from one tree. Think of it as the final boss in a video game that has every weapon, every defense, every attack. And when you think you've defeated it, it multiplies. And if you have pets or small children at home, pay extra attention to plants number 4, number 7, and number 18 on this list. English ivy, wisteria, and morning glory. They're especially dangerous. Please, keep your family safe. The most important gardening skill isn't knowing what to plant. It's knowing what not to plant. And now, you have that knowledge. So here's what I want you to do. Head down to the comments and tell me which plant on this list has been your biggest nightmare. Which one has cost you the most money, the most time, the most heartache? Are you team underground invaders, dealing with bamboo, knotweed, and those sneaky rhizomes? Are you team beautiful destroyers, wisteria, trumpet vine, and morning glory? Or are you team chemical warfare, tree of heaven, Russian olive, and the plants that poison the very soil they grow in? Like this video, so we can warn more gardeners. Subscribe if you haven't. We're always working to help you garden smarter. And we'll see you in the next one. Garden smarter, friends.